Angela Cripps, the MD of the Recruiting Gym. This is Substance Suicide 365. And I'm going to have lovely guests here. Matt, thank you for joining us. We should have Lewis in a moment as well, and that'll be the 8 of us. But we're all here, first and foremost, to say congratulations to Kim Grocott. Today is 1 year of sober, 365 days.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to have stories of that sobriety. We're going to start with that later on. We're going to tap into the suicide. So if that is a trigger for you, we'll give you warnings, don't worry, so that you'll be able to drop off if that's not something you're here to listen for. But let's get to Kim first and foremost, and then we'll go around each and every one of you and find out about your inspiring stories too. Kim, okay, a year ago, take us through it. What was going on?
Okay, so basically a year ago something happened, and there was lots going on in my life at that time. You know, I was the party girl. I was the one that was out every weekend when the boy was at his dad's. It was, you know, single, just enjoying myself. And then it started to creep in to not day-to-day life at all, but, you know, I was using it more of a coping mechanism. When things were going wrong, I would use it. When things were going right, I would use it. And it just became, it was almost my identity for quite a while. You know, I was the one that was out and about around town every Friday thinking that I was God's gift. And just putting on this persona of, you know, someone that was confident, had my shit together, great mum, all this sort of stuff. And then, yeah, I've struggled for a while, to be honest. I think having gone through the last 365 days, I've had to do a lot of work. And you look back and you think, oh, yeah, that was probably a telltale sign a long time ago. Something I should probably say is I've got ADHD, so I am naturally a very addictive person. Like, it can be anything, you know, it can be trainers. I've got about 50 pairs of trainers, which is just ridiculous. Then it will be perfume. I've got to have all the different perfumes. Then it's food. It doesn't matter what it is. I just want more. So that's what I would say my addiction is. My addiction is more. Doesn't matter what it is. Like, now that I've started going to the gym, now it's that. So, yeah, and I went on a family holiday and it all came to a head. It was a bit of a stressful family holiday. Financially, I wasn't in the best place. There was some medical stuff going on. So there was just lots of little things happening, and I just broke, basically. I tried to give up before, lasted 77 days. And then, of course, I was like, I haven't got an issue. I can just, you know, I've had a break. I'm all right. But what I've realised is I cannot drink like a normal person. I can't. If I put one in me, something triggers and I'm off. Like, I don't have to drink every day to know that. But I know that once I get going, most people, when they drink more, they start to feel worse. Well, I just drink and drink and drink until my body cannot cope anymore, basically. You know, there was no off switch for me. Work-wise, how I've still got a job, quite honestly, is something I'm grateful for every single day. And I always shout her out and she hates me for doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. If it wasn't for Christina's love and support, not just as a boss, but as a friend, I genuinely don't know A, where I would be, or B, if I would even be here at all, to be honest, because she could see that I wasn't turning in for work, but rather than just the typical boss getting peed off and, you know, sending me down disciplinaries and all that sort of business, it was like, well, hang on, there's got to be a reason here. And what is that reason? So, yeah, I'm very, very thankful for her. And she's given me endless support, whether it be I've been to different sort of mental health groups. I did the breakthrough group, which she was a part of with Success Psychology. And that was really the catalyst that started it all. And yeah, I guess I just admitted defeat. I admitted defeat. I got to a place that I never thought I would get to. I've shared it on my personal Facebook, but yeah, like I say, this holiday was a nightmare. I came home, I wanted to relax, and that relax turned into 2 or 3 days of absolute carnage. So it was drinking to absolutely and get obliterated, and then I knew that I'd messed up. So then that it was just a cyclone of just hatred for myself. So it was waking up drinking till I passed out, waking up drinking till it was just horrific. Yeah, it's not somewhere I ever thought that I would get to be honest. And honestly, the worst thing about it was my son was in the house at the time, and that's something that I've got to live with. Quite rightly, my sister. So people were messaging me, knocking on the door. I wasn't answering. And my sister had a key, which at the time I wasn't grateful for, but thank God she did. And yeah, she come and took my boy away. And there was a long period where I wasn't, well, not a lot. It was long to me. It was only a couple of weeks, but yeah, she 100% did the right thing because I wasn't well. I wasn't well. And it's, like I said, I didn't wake up every day and drink, so it wasn't a dependence at all. But I just couldn't cope. And yeah, so that's what led me to give up drinking, and just knowing what I put him through. Like, he was safe, well, safe, but you know what I mean. He didn't come to any harm, but the fact that he was 7 at the time, so he's old enough to know things. And the fact that I put him in that situation and through that is something that I will just never ever do again.
So there was that catalyst then, and that realization that yeah, this is enough. And I've seen photos of you with him in this last year, and the joy in both your faces. So obviously it's had a huge impact on him as well. I'm thinking about a few others of you here. Feel free now to jump in if any of that resonated with you. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to. Sorry, Kim. Kim, I think there's quite a lot of similarities there, really, that you said that resonated with me. And I've got 3 children who are 18, 17 and 14. And I look back now and I did exactly the same as you. I either celebrated a really good day, like I got through a day with something to drink, or if it was a bad day, it would be exactly the same. And that was all quite manageable up until about 5 years ago, where as a family we experienced suicide, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But that bereavement was a really painful for me, and I just sunk myself into alcohol. It was the only thing I could do to try and get through that period. And I think I probably was on and off drunk for about 2 months before I suddenly realized that this is just, I just can't do this. So as of the 9th of June this year, I'm 5 years sober. So, wow. And it's really, thank you. And it's really, I feel very, it's really uncomfortable to say those words, because actually to admit that you've had an issue with alcoholism is really difficult, because, you know, most people who've had a problem like I did are very high functioning. And I did all that thing with other mums where it would normally be tea, wouldn't it? But then actually it turned into a bit of a booze fest. And completely normal in my circle of friends would be alcohol. It's like, it was almost a standing joke. Like, you know, if you were at the gates in the morning, it's a bit like, oh, you look a bit hungover. Yeah. Unbelievable behaviour, really. But I think, you know, having that bereavement for me took that drinking into a different level, and it was quite scary. And I was very lucky that my husband gave up exactly the same day as me. And so, yeah, so we've now been without alcohol. But when you said that about ADHD, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I, like you, can get very addicted to things. So I'm now 2.5 years into my CrossFit journey. Like, I'm literally 5'1.5 inches like in the gym trying to pull all these kind of big weights. But that's now become my new addiction, but of course it's a healthy addiction for me. So yes, a lot of the things that you said there, Kim, that whole, you know, the guilt thing about parenting around alcohol, and, you know, really worrying about what impression that you're giving your family as someone that is becoming very dependent on alcohol to get themselves through a day is not good. And, you know, I think my youngest probably was similar age to your youngest, and she doesn't have memories of me being inebriated. She always thought I was really good fun mum, which in a way is really healthy, and thank God for me. But you know, I don't know the damage that I did as a parent that drank around them, but I do know that, you know, you and I and everybody else are now on the right path and a really good healthy journey. But I know I can never have any alcohol again for the same reason as you did, because there's never one. It's never, and that's a really sad thing in a way to have to admit to myself, is that I will never be able to enjoy a really decent glass of wine, because for me it wouldn't matter if it was a £50 bottle of wine or a £5 bottle of wine, it would all go down the same way. So yeah, so that's slightly sad, but that's something I've had to kind of reconcile to myself, is that I'm afraid I am a nothing when it comes to a nothing drinker. So yeah, so thank you.
Well, and some great positive things in there. The fact that you've appreciated that you do have this addiction potential within you, to switch it to health and fitness. Like,
absolutely, you've got to channel it somewhere. Yeah, you do have to, because, you know, the problem is I think there's a lot of mental health issues surrounded with alcohol, because it's a coping strategy, isn't it? So if you can switch that into something positive, you know, it might be art, it might be outdoor barefoot walking, it doesn't really matter what you do, but you do need to find something to substitute what you were doing to celebrate or commiserate those difficult times. So I'm glad that we found the gym, Kim.
Yes. Not there yet, we're getting there.
Yeah, exactly, it takes time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Matt, I'd like to bring you in here as well. There was lots of nodding, and there were some lovely affirmations in the chat that you were sending there to Kim. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it just resonates between so many people who have ever admitted that they've had an issue with alcohol for whatever reason. I mean, you know, the ADHD thing, yeah, currently going through that process. And when you understand what alcohol does to your dopamine levels and your dopamine cycle, if you've got an ADHD brain, it's like rocket fuel. You know, we talk about alcohol being rocket fuel with anxiety, but when you've got ADHD, it's double whammy. You know, alcohol induces anxiety with what it does to your chemical composition. Alcohol completely smashes your dopamine levels high and low when you've got ADHD issues. So it's just one of these things that so many people are actually coming out of the woodwork now, understanding they've got this going on. I mean, one of the things that Charlotte just said, and I work with a lot of people, that it's not about that you're missing out. You know, when you go down this path of putting alcohol out of your system, it's actually, what good would it do anymore? You know, you completely reframe. You're not missing out on anything in life. You're actually getting your life back. You know, so one of the biggest things I often find, you know, people will message me, God knows whenever, and go, oh, I'm having a real craving for this. And I'm like, why? What good would it do you? In the past life, you've had all these problems with alcohol. It's caused you no end of shit. What good would it do if you go down that route now? You know, take off the rose-tinted glasses about what alcohol really is, and people start to see a very different world. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's so many common stories. And actually, I'm not anti-alcohol, actually. You know, I recognize there is a choice for everyone, and some people can have a drink. You know, my wife, she'll have a gin and just go, yeah, okay, crack on. But there is this thing where, you know, people are starting to wake up and see alcohol for what it actually is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it does seem to be quite a British thing as well, isn't it? We are renowned around the world for binge drinkers. Like we say, I don't know if anyone here would consider themselves an alcoholic. I don't think you were. Like Kim and Charlotte was saying, it wasn't dependent. It was just that once you started, but you could choose when you started.
The thing that sorry, Matt, go on.
I was just about to say, I always say this to people. I never had an alcohol problem. I had a me problem. Alcohol was covering everything up. I mean, I run a couple of, I'm involved in quite a few online groups and stuff, and you find that obviously given the language, it's something, but I see a lot of this in America as well. You know, they've got a booze and after work culture, you know, and as much as we like to think it's a British thing, it is around the world as well. It's just that we don't speak the language. But Yeah, it's becoming a coping strategy for people who are struggling with their own thoughts more than an alcohol related necessity. You know, there's not many people out there who are waking up going, I need a drink, and putting vodka on their cornflakes. There are an awful lot of people out there who are going through a day and going, shit, I can't cope with my own thoughts, therefore they're numbing it out. And that's pretty universal.
Yeah.
So watching out for the signs then, Rebecca, I know a lot of that would have resonated with your scenario as well. How long are you sober now?
Over 5 years. And it's, you know, coming back to what Charlotte was saying and Matt picked up on there, for me, and this is just my personal belief on it, I'm not missing out on anything, you know. And after many years of having a bad relationship with alcohol, is how I termed it, was I chose me, and I've been choosing me every day since. And I've been really blessed. I went and got help with this. I was part of a leadership program at the time. I had support around this. Something Kim was saying back to having people around you, is I have never, since I made that choice, felt like I've wanted a drink, had to resist having a drink, or even it doesn't even cross my mind anymore. And I used it in all the ways. I was a single mum. I, you know, grown up in a recruitment environment where drinking was the thing, right? So, you know, it had become very much part of my life. It had come into my home life. And as Matt says, it wasn't an alcohol, it was a me. There was stuff going on that I didn't know how to deal with. But when I became a single mum, I really didn't want to be showing up that way for my kids, you know, like Kim was sharing there. And I never had it to that extreme that Kim shared there. And it's such a brave thing to share, Kim. But I did have days where there were things occurred that I was, you know, really deeply ashamed of, that my kids had to experience or see. And I didn't want that to be part of my life anymore. But for me, what really happened was I chose me. It's not that I gave anything up. I literally gave nothing up. What I did was I made a choice. It was the easiest choice once I'd made it. And it's never been an issue again. And I've had as many life things happen since I gave up in the last 5 years that in the past I would have gone and got a drink, both celebratory and, you know, bad things happening. And it has never once been an issue for me. And that for me is really, really powerful. And I personally want people to see that they're not giving anything up, that it is actually choosing a life. We don't need alcohol. It is a way of coping. And I'm not anti-alcohol either. And I'm not preaching to anybody else. Whatever you choose it for you, and choose it because it's a towards motivation. I wanted to create a better life for myself. And that is exactly what I've done. And I do not miss out on anything at all. Interestingly, and I wanted to share this today, and it was opportune that it happened today. So I've been going through some stuff in my life over the last few months, and I've gone and got hypnotherapy to supplement the other work that I do. I'm a coach myself, but I also work with coaches for me. But I've been getting some hypnotherapy. And one of the things that I realized as I was working through it with my hypnotherapist on Monday was that the times that I've chosen myself over something that doesn't serve me well, twice. I gave up smoking 19 years ago, and I gave up. I didn't give up. I chose not to smoke because I wanted to have children, and I didn't want to have to give up because I was pregnant. So I chose to go and get support to stop smoking. And when I gave up drinking, both times there was an element of hypnotherapy in there. So, you know, and I'm a coach, so I work with people around their mindset. So that is one way of doing it. But what I realized was there was actually something that went into the very core of my operating system that shifted, that meant I came out of the room when I gave up smoking, when I made the decision not to drink anymore, that actually just never had me to battle with willpower. Right. It's just something has shifted in me. And I just wanted to share that because, you know, if there are people watching, you know, go and work with a coach. Matt does some great work in this space. I coach people in all aspects of life. Yes, the mindset is important, but there are really, really powerful therapies out there that can really get into the core of your beingness and shift things for you. And that really only became apparent to me this week. So I just wanted to share that today as well. But please, choose you, right? Choose you and celebrate. I don't miss out. I'm not sad that I will never have a glass of wine again. It just doesn't, it's just not in my psyche. I don't see it that way. So that's my personal, it's not making anyone else wrong for how they see it, but that's just how I see it.
And how wonderful that time's caught up as well, and we've got all these wonderful non-alcoholic drinks as well to support and help. There's no need, is there, if that's not a driver? Keith, I want to bring you in here because this has ended up being an actual career for you. If you could share your story a little, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, hi guys, hi, and thanks so much, and big thanks to especially for sharing that story and putting yourself in that kind of vulnerable place, and I love it. And even already just telling your story will engage and will resonate with so many people. So I was a teacher. I suppose I still am a teacher, because once you're a teacher, you're kind of always a teacher. I was a secondary teacher, curriculum leader, kind of on that kind of middle management level at school. And for me, teaching was everything. It was the perfect kind of job for me, that I'd always kind of dreamed of doing. But I was definitely going through a period in my life, and where all kind of roads led to this point where I kind of was getting stressed. I was overusing with alcohol. I wasn't being that parent that I wanted to be, that husband. I wasn't able to train consistently. I wasn't in that kind of good mental wellness space that I wanted to be. And I was just like, this can't be it. This cannot be life. This must not be it. That's when I went off and started to inquire and investigate and kind of upskill myself. And all roads led, amongst other things, to me taking a break from booze over lots of different periods. Really, it was a 3 or 4 year cycle. I always explain that to people. It wasn't a quick fix. Probably because I was stubborn, probably because I was Irish, probably because I'm a man, and I didn't want to do all these things. And the probably so obvious, but eventually I came to it, and it has been the best things. And so many things resonate with me that have already been said, and around not feeling like I'm giving up, not feeling like I'm leaving anything behind. I just don't have time for it. don't want to leave anything on the table when it's all said and done. And if I could kind of share one thing that often, because there might be people watching this going, yeah, I could probably maybe do with it, or I'm a bit curious about it, but it's not that bad. Life's okay. I can still keep going. I'm doing all right. That's just kind of, maybe you're just being your average self. Maybe there's actually a huge, better version of yourself out there, ready to be discovered, ready to be got after. And that's the kind of exciting area. And for me, often we try and maybe mellow it down and try and say, well, I'll drink less or I'll reduce it. And I actually think that gray area is actually more confusing, more harder. We talked about willpower, and willpower comes and goes. It's actually way easier for me when you get to the point and you say, do you know what? I can do without it. I'm going to try and give it a break. And then you go and live all the benefits. And when you live all the benefits, the way Kim has described, just waking up, Kim, on a Monday, not having that crippling anxiety. And what did I do? What did I say? Who did I offend? Checking your phone for your messages, or where you were, where you spent the money. Just waking up going, it's a new week. I've got this. I can go and do this. So, if anyone is out there and a little bit curious, give yourself that opportunity. Why not? What have you got to lose by maybe doing something for yourself? So yeah, thanks so much for asking.
No, my pleasure. And yes, Dryness January doesn't have to be January. It can be tomorrow. It could be any time, couldn't it? There's a few comments over on LinkedIn that I'd like to bring in at this time. Andy Dunn saying Kim is doing great. We are competing with each other on our Apple Watch fitness challenges right now. Keep it up, champ. Again, it's that linking with others, isn't it? Where there is someone, if you can get others involved in your journey to support you. Charlotte, you said that Steve gave up the same day as you, so that support there is just amazing. Laura Marsden, super proud of you, Kim. Thank you for sharing your story, Charlotte. Emma Bowen, I'm so glad you're watching. Oh, I've got chills now. Alcohol is my dad's best friend and his worst enemy. So if you want to share this link with him, we'd love you to. That's what we're here for. So Anthony McCormack saying, yeah, thanks, Kim, and everyone. Really good topic to talk about. Joe, let's talk to you, because tell us a little bit about your story and what impact it's had in this time since you've stopped drinking.
So I was just kind of like chugging along, being my average self. I love that, Keith. I was very much being my average self, right? And I didn't really deep it when it came to making the decision. It was, if I'm really honest, it was a little bit of a bit of a New Year's Eve whim. I was like, I mean, it's been, when was it? 2020, New Year's Eve 2022, just going into 2023. And I was kind of like sat in the restaurant. And I felt like I was so full. All I'd done is eat and drink for about what felt like 6 years on the run up to this New Year's Eve meal. And I felt overweight. I felt I was having loads of health issues. I was like, oh my gosh, I've literally drank nonstop, like not even Christmas, like on the run up. And I just felt a really, really ineffective version of myself. Right, I was living a very, very average life, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give up. I'm not drinking. I'm going to stop drinking alcohol tomorrow. I didn't make this big announcement and run up to it. You know, I'm going to go sober, and I still don't even use that word sober. I just say I've changed my relationship with alcohol, because, like, you know, I probably had about 5 drinks in the last year and a half. And I always want to kind of like, I don't ever want to build my journey into being this thing that if I break it, that's it. I've got to go back to square one, right? And I'm very much kind of like that. So I want to be kind to myself and gentle and say, I've changed my relationship with alcohol. That means that 99.9% of the time I don't drink. And I don't think I've actually had a drink for the whole of this year. I don't think. You know, I had a gin and tonic on the beach in Ibiza last year. Yes, I did Ibiza sober. But yeah, but for me, what I decided to do on a whim has been a life-changing decision, like literally life-changing. And there was a few people actually that I followed on the run up. So I say it was a whim, but actually I was having conversations with people. I did, you know, I've obviously followed Rebecca. Leisha Holmes was a massive influence to me. I was like, if I see another picture of Leisha looking incredible, stood on top of a mountain in Manchester somewhere, I want that to be me. I want a slice of that life. And I also had a client that I sat down with, we'd been for a meal, and she was telling me about like this, how alcohol changes who you are as a human being. And she was like, maybe after the first couple of months you'll start to feel different, but then like month 5 and month 6 you'll actually start to feel a bit euphoric. You'll experience feelings that you never actually thought you could feel. You will be the best physical and mental version of yourself that you can ever be. And she was using all these words about like, and it sounds like I need a slice of that. That sounds incredible. And I was like, really? You genuinely feel like euphoric? All of that stuff you're describing. I was like, you know, that sounds cool. And so I started doing, you know, dry January, which I think is really powerful. I thought, well, I might as well go on. And then I went on, and I went on, and I went on. And I thought, suddenly realised I had become somebody who doesn't drink. And then it started to happen. I started to feel like that client said, oh, well, I would do. I started to feel things I never knew were possible. And I've posted about this before, and this sounds like wild. I have never felt pure happiness, right? I still struggle to feel pure happiness now, but I you know, constantly, I mean, who does, right? But I actually feel joy. Like, I never felt that. I've done some incredible things in my life, usually with a glass of champagne in my hand, and I have never felt like pure euphoric joy. And I'd started to, like, you know, doing stuff, you know, getting out in the outdoors and having these like weird, like feeling like I was on drugs or something, this like euphoric high. And I just felt so connected with who I am as a human and being able to feel it in my stomach. Like, it must have, I spoke to somebody who's an expert in gut health and brain stuff, right? And I said, you know what, Katie, I'm having all these, like, this weird feeling in my belly. What is it? And she's like, 'cause you've sorted out your gut health. And this is what's responsible for all these, you know, feel good feelings and chemistry and all of that, you know, all the chemicals. And so now that's been my, that clarity, that happiness, and, you know, like everybody, the last like 6 months of my life is like literally throwing every boulder and curveball and, you know, slab of concrete you can imagine at me. And I genuinely believe that if I was still drinking, I would be curled up in a ball on that floor. Right? There is no way I would have had the resilience and mental capability to be able to, you know, to deal with that stuff. And the thing that stops me now from drinking is that I am like, why would I want to unpick the gift that I've been given? Why would I ever want to go back to feeling like I felt? And I've not reflected too much on all of that stuff. This is, for me, it's about like this second part of my life. And the result has been, you know, immense. I've lost 2.5 stone for the first time ever. I'm physically fit and strong, and I get up at 5:30 and I go to my HIIT classes 4 times a week. And for anybody thinking about it, I just, it's like the best gift you could ever give yourself. And a lot of what I've just said is obviously stolen from Rebecca, because she's really helped on my journey as well, rewire some of the you know, the things that I would tell myself. But I'll stop there because I feel emotional about it. It's so powerful for me. I can't hear you. Am I? No.
No,
Because I muted myself. There was bound to be. It's one. It's me. But Rebecca, if you could share then, because you were saying some comments on there that I've highlighted. But yeah, just hearing Jo say that, how does that make you feel?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been with Jo on this journey, you know, and it's all Jo, right? You know, so she made the choices, she made the decisions, she listened, she heard, she could see that something else was possible. She looked around and saw other people who were living better lives. But, you know, one of the greatest joys, you know, Jo's become a very dear friend of mine, is just to see Jo with life still happening. And that's the comment I put in there, right? You know, life still happens, shit still happens, right? Sorry for swearing on LinkedIn.
No.
You know, boulders, concrete slabs, everything. It keeps coming. And I think that's one of the important things. But what Jo shared there, which I think is really powerful, is we get to be with those things differently when we're not coping by reaching for a drink. We get to be the best versions of ourselves at the very moments that we need to be the best versions of ourselves, for ourselves and for other people. And, you know, as Jo says, that feeling of euphoria, I get that too. Right. And there are other days where life happens where, you know, that seems like a long way away. The great thing is that I know I can access that feeling because I've fundamentally shifted the relationship I had with alcohol, and Jo's done the same, so that I can come back to the very best version of me. And I don't have to go and find it in the bottle of a bottle or a drink or a glass of champagne. And as Jo said, there are ways that we have been missing out on enjoying life because we've gone for the glass of champagne. You know, where there is so much more out there in life that we can go and experience. And, you know, the best thing, we can still go to the posh parties and we can have a glass of non-alcoholic fizz. I've found some amazing non-alcoholic bubbles. So I still go to the parties. I still go and I still have my gorgeous glass of champagne. It's just not got any alcohol in it. And then I can also choose to go and stand on the top of the mountain or travel around the world or show up for my clients. That was one of the big things for me as well when I was moving into coaching people. I can't show up for people if I'm not being this for myself. And I didn't know at the point at which I made that choice how powerful it would be for many people that I've worked with. And Jo, you know, it makes me emotional to see Jo looking so bloody gorgeous as always. She always did, but to see always, but there's a different glow to Jo in the last 2 years. And how she's showing up in her life, in her business, in her relationships, in everything. And that just brings me so much joy.
We all spotted it straight away. I would say around that 4 or 5 months. That was probably when I first saw you after you gave it. And I was like, oh my God, what's happened? You just looked even more amazing than normal. So yeah, it definitely made it a huge impact to you. Lewis, thank you for persevering and finally getting in here. I know you've had major issues with IT today, whether it's your company, Total Jobs obviously got affected by this world outage, global outage, but you got here, and that's all that matters. We started with Kim's 365 days today, 1 year on. So you're moving into your second year, Kim. Oh, there we go. That sounds good, doesn't it? And talking about ADHD as well and the impact that had and having these things. And I know that's something that is close to your heart. So if you'd like to share a little bit about your story.
Thank you for having me again, Angela. Just a quick roundup of my morning. My laptop has just given up, so I'm on the mobile. So apologies. And a special shout out to my daughter. It's her 5th birthday, so in a couple of hours I'm going to pick her up from school. And she's her and my other 2 children, my son Carl and my stepson Killian, are part of this story. So for me, I was diagnosed when I had ADHD when I was 9. So Kim, big nudge, fellow neurospicy. We have the superpower. But the one negative we do have is the effects of things like alcohol and drugs is huge on ADHD. My story particularly was last year when I'd recently got married to my wife Jade, and as you know, with ADHD, when you get a high, the high is, as Joe would say, it's euphoric, but the low is the low. When I went through a state of depression, where I gained 2 stone, I stopped boxing, drinking a lot, red wine, lager, just for any reason. So when I was hurting, it would be like, right, well, let's have a drink because then everything's all right. Followed that up with, say, 3 days of anxiety, overthinking, painful. And then one day, like, I realised that, you know, my children and my wife, you know, would always say, "Oh, are you okay, Daddy?" That kind of thing. And it hits deep because you think you're the example for your children, right? And I know that me and my wife were great parents, but you think you've got to be the best example possible. Off the back of that, I spoke to close friends who basically pulled together to get me out of that, because it tends to be like with work, with personal friends, that I tend to be the energy and the buzz and the centre of everything to get the uplift. Although in this call, I must say, I've been listening since trying to log in. Everyone's so positive and upbeat, and I absolutely love it. It's definitely got that "thank God it's Friday" feeling. So they pulled me out of it, and since then I lost 2 stone. I'm still punching when it comes to my wife, but I'm looking a lot better in regards to my skin, the way I feel. Anxiety has got a hell of a lot better from, you know, having to turn to having a drink. And I must say as well, for people that have been through that, there's no shame in admitting it. At the end of the day, there's people going through it, that have been through it and that will go through it. It's just being able to listen and understand and learn from that. And I think the things that are vital is hearing it from family, close friends, and seeing when your kids can see it. Because like I say, for me, my kids come before the whole world, like the complete planet. They're everything to me. And for an example, this weekend, we're having family over tonight. I'd rather eat a slice of Domino's pizza than have a bottle of Madry, for instance, a lager, because it's all about the kids. It's what I live for. And, you know, any advice I can give moving forward is just speak to your close friends, speak to your family. If you're feeling rubbish, that's the best port of call. Turn into a beer, it's just going to dig you deeper in a hole for a few days. What you're doing is giving a pause for a couple of hours or a couple of days. But again, just to the whole room, incredible stories, fantastic and so positive for what you've been through, and keep on that journey. And I'm always here for everyone here, for everyone listening. That family first. ADHD is a superpower. Don't affect them powers. And have an amazing weekend.
Thank you for sharing that. We've got people sharing their favorite alcohol-free drinks as well, so keep doing that. Over on LinkedIn, Andy's saying, yeah, Sean Anderson told me about Lucky Saint. Great as a beer. Lara Kinvin, apologies if I pronounced that wrong. I'm just starting to make the choice for me. Some great drinks out there now. So again, you're making the choice and you're choosing you, and that's what is one of the most important things you can do in life. So if you need help, you need support, there's 8 people on here that you can reach out to straight away that would be there for you and support if they need it. Okay, so we've sort of established then that the alcohol doesn't make you a better you. You think you're the life and soul of the party, but certainly from people that I've been with, not always the case. They're looking at you going, what an idiot. It doesn't always reflect well on you. So by making the choice as to what's right for you and being a better person, I don't think there's a better choice that you can make. We are now going to move into the other side of the webinar. We're here to support Shout, which is a text-based support helpline. So think Samaritans, but you don't call, you text. And of course, a lot of the younger generation is much happier to do that. So they're doing some fantastic work. I'm just going full Shout. Okay, from there. And we've got the button on here on Crowd. If you want to donate, Julia Doherty was a member of our recruitment industry, and her daughter used the helpline. She's very open about sharing that. So is so grateful for them. So it's her Just Giving line to donate to that. It's also on the LinkedIn as well. So just think the one text, if they make that text to 85258, could make a difference. So thank you, Jo, for joining us. I know she was going to drop off at this point. If there's anyone else that needs to, feel free. And I must admit, when I thought about this, I thought, well, what am I going to be able to contribute to this? I don't consider myself as having a drink, and I've never given up drink in my life. And I thought, well, not had suicide either, until I really did actually think about it and stop for a moment. And there's probably a year of my life that I blocked out around late 17, early 18, where I was drinking ridiculously. I was doing my A-levels. I was down the pub most nights, most weekends, even to the point where I was drunk and driving home and offering lifts to someone else who fell out of the car and broke her collarbone. I then drove her to the hospital. 2 a.m, I'm driving the ambulance that had blocked me in and moving out. I mean, this is just all ridiculous stuff. And then getting up in the morning and going and doing an A-level exam. So I'm sort of 18 at the time. And I also, at that time, got a broken heart, first love, broken heart, and used to drive up to our local forest and sleep there in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep. And I would just drive there and I would feel better in the forest with nature. So obviously anything could have happened to me there. And I was contemplating suicide. I was contemplating driving as fast as I could and turning the wheel, all of these thoughts. And I'm sure we've all done that at some point in our lives. So I think this is something that does affect everyone. And it can just be one little trigger, one thing too much that flips us over. And we don't talk about it. It's one of those other taboo subjects that menopause was one, and we've done loads on that. And we're talking about it all the time. We don't care. If you don't want to hear about it, you need to hear about it. And suicide, I think, is another one of these that it's even hard. It's hard to talk about. But just making those links, the average age for menopause is 51 for women, and the average age for suicide for women is 51 as well. There is a correlation there that is not a coincidence. So sharing those elements. I don't know where this is going to go. I haven't had conversations with people. So who would like to share first?
Can I'd like to jump in there if I can, because of the link you made there with menopause. And you know, I'm 50. Well, I'm actually officially 50 because I'm going backwards now, but you know, 51.
Yeah.
And I went through the menopause. So I'm postmenopausal now, but I went through the menopause, I believe, pretty much straight after having my last child. So I had my last child at 40. I fed him till I was 43, 44. And I think I actually went into perimenopause kind of directly after the baby blues of the drop in hormones that were going on when I stopped feeding my youngest child. He's now 11. He's finishing school. It's all very exciting. Primary school. But so I went into that period, like from coming from like and I'd had 3 children. So I hadn't been hormonally normal, if you want to call it that, for, you know, a long period of time. And then I went straight, I believe, into perimenopause. Now, for me, I also went, you know, in that time, COVID occurred. My marriage broke down financially. I sold my home. You know, there was life was happening, and I was still drinking at the early stages of that, right? Tying it back to what we were saying earlier. One of the things that I think is really, and I haven't ever attempted suicide. I don't think I've ever got to the point where I've really considered that as an option. However, what I had in that time was a real sense of hopelessness, of really not knowing what the hell was going on in my life. And that feeling of hopelessness is probably the closest that I could ever experience to thinking, what options do I have? Right. So I really want to I never thought that I would actually, you know, commit suicide or take my own life, but the feeling of hopelessness. And I think, you know, for a lot of women, and this is why it's so great that we're talking about this, and I don't want to make it all about menopause, because it might be something else. It might be ADHD. It might be, you know, autism. It might be, you know, that you don't understand the impact that alcohol has on you, or any dopamine hit has on you. That feeling of hopelessness is the closest I've been to it, and not knowing what to do about it. So the more conversations we have when we share that we've all had those moments, even if it's not been as dramatic as I attempted anything, the more we share those and the more we tell other people. And I did, you know, I got to, and I went and I told people. And there's a lot of people won't know that about me. It's not something I splash around everywhere. But for me, there were people that I could go to where I went, this is where I'm at right now, and I don't know how, and I don't know what is going on. I know that more now. At the beginning of that journey, you know, I remember sitting at my kitchen table one day and literally just bursting into tears. Nothing was going on, and just feeling like I don't know what the point is. So this was post feeding my child, and probably as I was moving into perimenopause. I don't know what's going on. So for anyone who's listening, even if you don't have that feeling of, or you've experienced, you know, thoughts of suicide, that moment of hopelessness is the point to go and find somebody who you can talk to, who can help you to just get you back to, there is always hope. There is always hope. So that's my share from a personal perspective of this topic, and as near I've been to it. And I'm blessed that I haven't had anyone near me that's gone through this either. I have people who are dealing with some stuff that this is a possibility right now with young people in their lives. And, you know, it's having conversations like this, being able to reach out to other people, having people that are open and willing to have conversations, whether they've experienced it or not, but can be here in just a loving space with kindness and compassion, and hear what you're saying and hear what you're sharing is really important. So, Angela, I really, you know, want to acknowledge you for creating this space, because it is a difficult conversation. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, and thank you for contributing. Charlotte, you mentioned earlier that actually that was a trigger. The suicide in your family.
Yeah, we lost my nephew, who was 18, 5 years ago, to suicide, and you know, he'd attempted a few times. It wasn't one of those little cry for helps that I think, you know, you kind of hear a lot, don't you? And it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. We knew he'd battled with his mental health, and that was such a huge shock. And obviously alcohol for me was the way through that, but it kind of, I've got a son who's now turning nearly into 19, and it's just horrifying really that somebody so young and vulnerable can be so alone. But for me, that wasn't the end of it. A year after, my son, who was 14 at the time, his best friend committed suicide. And I've had so many different people in my life who, so unfortunately that's 2 deaths, but a number of attempts as well. It's just shocking how vulnerable we are as human beings, and how much there is in life that just knocks us off our feet. So what I think scares me is the lack of support, really, from a mental health perspective, because having gone through it with a friend of mine and actually got her admitted into a hospital, amazing, but until that happens, that person can be pretty much on their own, and kind of relies on friends and family really to deal with all of the messiness behind it, and it just uncovers so many horrendous things. So the system, in my opinion, is pretty broke. Going through it and having been through it with a number of people, it's devastating. I suppose good stuff that came out of losing my nephew is that as a family, it's brought us really, really close together. It's a conversation I never wanted to have with my own children, but subsequently did. Now, that was an amazing catalyst for discussion around why might somebody feel the need to do that, and what support could be available us as a family, and how we talk about stuff. So yeah, horrendous experience. And I know there's people here that have been at the front of all of those things as well, and I just think that, I've just done my donation to Shout, but I think if something like Shout had been available for Alfie, I'd like to think that he would have had somebody that would have responded straight away. Unfortunately, his social worker was on holiday, so he didn't get to speak to somebody, So, the idea of having that kind of number available to anybody, whether you're having a tough time or whether you're maybe at that stage where you're thinking, I can't go on, because that's my experience and kind of the way that I now understand suicide. And I know this is not everybody's experience, but it quite often isn't, I don't want to be here. It's more, I just don't want to deal with this pain. And it's kind of like, how do I stop feeling so absolutely dreadful, like there is no other response or other way I can deal with it? So imagine having somebody that can text you back or phone you and just say, I'm listening. Like right now, I know that you probably feel that there is no other option, but there is. I think is incredible. And I'm so sorry for that poor mum that has had to, deal with and support her daughter. And, I know her name's Julia Doherty, but I just hope that she gets the reach out that she needs. I know that, the money she's raising is going to go to support a lot more people. So, yeah, I just wish that had been available for our family at the time, not just for Alfie, but for all of us, actually. Because if I'd had someone, I could have texted and said, I don't know how to unpick this. I don't know how to deal with grief. I don't understand how this could have happened and how we didn't notice. There's so many things, isn't there, that in retrospect you can look back on. So yeah, a massive shout out to Shout Out UK, and I hope that as a charity they get as much funding as they can to help those families. So thank you for listening.
No, thank you for sharing, because I know what a horrific time that was for all of you, and to be able to talk about it even, and that's the thing, isn't it? Those emotions are still going to be there. Paul Green, thank you for sharing that as well. Yes, definitely worth mentioning the Samaritans. So if you actually want to talk to someone, 116123. There's an email address there as well, jo@samaritans.org. So I don't know how many emails she's going to get, but call the number. Maybe that's if you want to work with them or support them in some way, shape or form. Don't email her if you've got trouble. Call or text and get a reply straight away. Because yeah, and that's the thing. You think, how many people could be saved? And obviously that hopelessness, and once they've gone, it's not them, it's all the people left behind. And it's not one person, is it? It's usually hundreds that are impacted by this. Anyone else would like to share their story? Yeah, Kim?
Yeah, so I've battled with my mental health for forever, really. I now, the longer that I've been on this sort of stuff, is the more I realised that actually it was probably the ADHD, because I was always the naughty one at school. I know it's probably a bit of a shock for you, Angela, but And I didn't really know how to navigate, and like I just thought that I was mental. Like people just seem to be able to go through life normally, and I'm just like, I just found everything so difficult. And I never understood why. And there was, you know, when I was in my teens and stuff, I self-harmed. But not to the point that I was trying to end things. I don't know. Was it just a release? I've no idea. But it's really interesting what Charlotte and Rebecca were saying. When all the stuff around like my addiction, and I do call it an addiction now. Some people don't. What I guess for me, what people don't understand, you do not have to drink every hour of the day to have an addiction. You don't. You know, the word alcoholism, I would consider myself an alcoholic. Does that mean that I wake up and drink in the morning every day? No, it doesn't. It means that when I put a drink inside me, something physical happens. And the only way I can liken it is to say if you have a peanut allergy, okay? I know it sounds ridiculous, but just bear with me. Somebody eats a peanut, it kicks off a reaction and something happens to their body. So they stay away from the peanuts. That's exactly what it's like to be an addict. If you put something in you and there's a physical change and you're off and running, chances are you might be an addict. So I just wanted to get that in there, because for me, a lot of people think that an addict has to be somebody on a park bench with absolutely not a pot to piss in, and it's not. It's you, it's me. Well, not you, but you know, it's everyone around us. It's the business people, it's the, you know, the doctors, the lawyers, whatever. So yeah, I just wanted to get that in. But with the suicide thing, and sharing back on what Rebecca and Charlotte said, the hopelessness I absolutely felt on those 3 days. And slightly similar to what Charlotte said, it's not that I wanted to die, I just didn't want to live the life that I was living. And that's the thing. Like a lot of people, when they go through it, they probably don't want to. I mean, I didn't want to leave everything behind, but it's just so painful to live the way that I was living, that along those 3 days, I think I was just on a mission to just stop feeling that pain, I guess. So yeah, and for me, having people to talk to, but again, if you're feeling like that, chances are you're going to be putting on a front to people. So you always think that, why didn't I reach out? What, I wish I'd said something. Well, if you're anything like me, you're a fantastic liar. Nobody would have known anything. You know, now that I've opened up and spoke to people about this stuff, they're like, I never knew how bad it was. Because you don't, there's an element of pride, you know, I'm full of ego. I want people to think that I've got my stuff together. Well, actually, I haven't. And tying it back to the alcohol stuff, we talk about not having to give something up. I'm so grateful that I now know that I'm an addict, because it means that I know I don't have to be stuck in this cycle of, why does this keep happening? You know, why is it that everything seems to be going well and then I screw it up at the last minute? I didn't know. And now I do know that stuff. I know how to stay away from it. There's millions of people, and I see it on my Snapchat, I see it in my Instagram every single week. And we make a joke of it, don't we? Oh, I'm only popping out for one. And then next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and the birds are tweeting. And we're doing this on a weekly cycle. So, yeah, and it's only ever going to go one way. You know, the alcohol and the addiction stuff, it's never going to get better. If you're anything like me and you're the type that I always used to brag, you know, I can drink anyone under the table. I can drink 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey before I go out and still have a great time. Like, that is not normal. But we've now grown up in a culture of, like, you know, your Geordie Shore type shows and things like that, where they are paid to go out on the lash and that's their career. But it is not normal to do the things that certainly I was doing, and this is my experience. It should not be normal for somebody to be able to drink 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey and then go out for a full evening and then go to the 24-hour on the way home. Like, I think our culture, especially for younger people, is that all or nothing. And it's become normal, but I'm not anti-alcohol at all. I just, wanted to say that. Like, if I could drink like a normal person, I absolutely would. But I just know that for me, I can't, and that's okay. You know, you wouldn't encourage somebody, going back to the peanut analogy, you wouldn't encourage somebody who's got an allergy to peanuts to go and pick up a bag of KP, would you? You just wouldn't. So why do we think, you know, I'll just have one? Do you think you'll ever, I still get it. Do you think you'll ever drink again? Do you think, like, I just can't.
No,
and
just don't. And that's the thing as well. We need to have that conversation, and for people to appreciate that that's not helping. And back to your point around, you want everyone to think that you've got your shit together. One thing about growing older, I realised no one's got their shit together. We all have issues. We've all got problems. That's life, and that's the whole point of it. I'd love either Matt or Lewis. I could see that Keith had frozen and he had to shoot off for a session anyway. But there is a question that's come in from Paul. So I'd love it, Matt, if you could take this one, because I'm not sure whether Lewis can hear us. Do you feel that as a society we ignore or are reticent to engage with someone who has mental health issues and maybe is considering suicide?
Yes. And, you know, Kim said this quite openly, you know, we put on a mask and we put on a front. And I think that there is so many people who are reluctant to say they've got a problem. You know, Kim talked about people who are suffering. I think that, you know, we can often tolerate suffering if we can see a way out. But the problem is you've got suffering and hopelessness because people don't believe they can be open about these conversations. If I admit that I've got a problem with my mental health, people will judge me. And, you know, there is the other side of this where, you know, a lot of people don't know what to say to people. And actually, kind of one of the things that I would encourage anyone to do is to understand that actually just being there and listening and being there for someone is more important than actually trying to fix them. It's not about fixing people. It's often about understanding who they are, you know. Like we say, we've got all these people on these calls. The more we have these conversations, the more it normalizes it. So many people are having these issues because they feel they don't belong. They don't fit the social media profile we have of the world these days. You know, everybody's got to have more. Everybody's got to do more and be more. And, you know, it's created a monster in society of expectations that can never be met. So, you know, the more that we all talk about this openly, the more it enables others to hear the conversation, be open to having it themselves. And for the people that are on the receiving end of it, you know that just being there and listening to someone genuinely and authentically, that is often what they need the most.
I really like that. It does feel like we've gone back to sort of the 80s and the yuppie culture of that wanting more all the time, and whether that's this generation's issues to deal with. That is our time, but I did just want to share this video to finish on. That was the best video that I've ever seen with relation to actually suicide, and I just think this really hits home. So I thought if everyone can mute, let me say thank you to all of you before we start. Thank you so much for sharing. I have really enjoyed this hour. It's been a bit tough at times, but I have really enjoyed it, and I think it might be something that we do once a quarter. So if you would like to join us on one of these, if you're celebrating a time period that you want to celebrate or something, then feel free to reach out to me, and we'll look to doing this again in a few months' time. So you've probably all seen this. This is the video that was put out on World Mental Health Day, and again, just to check in around you from Norwich City Football Club. And oh my goodness, what an amazing video. So let me just make that larger for everyone, and away we go.
Oh wow, how are you doing? You good? Oh, sorry, thank you. How you doing? God, it's exciting, isn't it? So, how's the week?
You're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope things are better outside of football.
No, you keep it.